been taking this class with Jennifer Snow up at Church Divinity School of the Pacific. It's online. About the history of the Episcopal Church. And it's been super eye-opening for me. Now, we did learn this stuff, or some of it, when I was in seminary back in the Dark Ages, otherwise it was the 90s. But for some reason, they love to cover the founding of the Episcopal Church, that one moment. They didn't really go before it, and they certainly then skipped up to modern day. There was lots of things that happened in between that they love to talk about, but they didn't really focus on the Episcopal Church side of it quite so much. So this has been a really eye-opening class. So here's the thing. Episcopal Church. We didn't start out as the Episcopal Church. In fact, we started out as the Church of England, but in the colonies under England. Now, it's easy for us to just imagine that they just, picked up Episcopalianism, then known as Anglicanism, and plunked it down in America. Done. But it wasn't that easy. In fact, the Church of England was used to a parish system where the population density was really tight. People lived really close to each other, and there was a church in every village, and every church was responsible for every person within the range of that parish. They all just belonged, they all just walked to church, and the role of the minister was to baptize all the babies born within their parish, to marry all the young people who were getting married in their parish, to visit all the sick people and bury everyone who died, and then of course, provide church and a good sermon. That was important, so that people could come together in prayer and worship with, of course, the use of the Book of Common Prayer. Very important. Now, to do this, they had these wonderful university-educated ministers, and they were given a respectable professional living. They had a house provided for them. They were paid by the government, and that was what they were used to in England. And it had been going on for a couple hundred years, and before that was the medieval church, who had been going on for more than 1,000 years. It was a good system. The thing is, the Church of England had never considered what to do in a place where the church wasn't this deeply rooted, already planted in place with those roots going down deep into the water, right? When it wasn't there yet. And they had to figure this out when they came to the United States. Of course, lots of people who were dedicated to the Church of England came to the United States, and they wanted that church to come with them, but they needed ministers. And the ones that came got here, and they looked around and they're like, oh, there's no buildings. The population, sparse, spread out all over the place. And some of the people here, they don't have any experience even with English Christianity. There's coming from all over the place. And the living conditions, well, they were rough. We've learned about that stuff in our history books. It was not easy being a colonist in the United States in those first 200 years. It seems as if a course in gardening and farming would have been more useful for these ministers coming over to minister to the colonists in the United States than, of course, a rigorous knowledge of Greek. Not so useful here. Right? Now, the ones that adapted and let themselves be changed and become a part of this new project that was happening here in the Americas did pretty well. They're the ones that did the best, but lots of people just couldn't tack it, and they went back to England where they'd get a good paycheck and a nice house and a congregation that just was right there on their doorstep. In the meantime, the early church here in the Americas was wringing their hands because everything was different, and the needs in the colony were huge. People really wanted the church. There was lots of hunger, poverty, loss, and struggle, like the perfect conditions for the church to be ministering to people in. So then, we became the United States, right? We had the gall to say, sorry, King, we don't need you. We're going to go on our own way. And I don't know how many, a lot of you learned about the founding of the Episcopal Church at all? A little bit. Matthew has. Yeah, a couple of you. What I think we don't always realize is that just like the U.S. had to figure out how to go it on our own, the church did, because of course they were no longer the Church of England. And funny enough, a lot of those Church of England ministers that had been paid to be there and all of that, they kind of thought, I'm part of that. I'm gonna go up to Canada, where they'll still give me a paycheck, and I'll still have a congregation that's all settled in, and I will still be part of the Church of England. They were loyalists, a lot of those Church of England clergy. So we were here, and we had to figure it out on ourselves, and we didn't know how to get ministers, because we didn't have a bishop in the United States. And England wasn't altogether keen. They were still feeling a little salty about the fact that we decided to say adios. We had to go to Scotland to get a bishop. But little by little, we figured it out. We built what looked like church here. But it was not easy. And the biggest piece that I don't think I had ever considered before, I had to figure out how to pay for it all. Like some of the things that we take for granted as members of any church anywhere in the United States. They had to figure this out back then. Like the all parish canvas, which we call pledge drives now, or stewardship. They had to figure out to do that, and that was not the only answer that they came up with, because another popular way to fund getting building a church or getting a minister was something called pew rents. Has anyone ever heard of that? Mm-hmm. So basically it's kind of like, like you're going to build a new wing of the hospital, and everybody gets a stone on the wall that said, I gave $1,000 and I gave $50. This was sort of like this, only you were paying for the pews. But the thing was, the people who paid for that pew, that became their seat. And they got the best seats in the house. And you can still sort of see this. There's a colonial church that was in Harvard Square in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and it still has the pew rent names on the pews of the original pew renters. So as you can see, that church, it figured out, solved a problem, but not great at serving the needs of everyone. Because, of course, who's paying the paycheck, right? Everything was different in the early Americas, and there's lots of hunger and poverty and loss and struggle, and the early Episcopal Church was doing some really good work there. But you know who was faster and better at it then? The Methodists and the Baptists, because they empowered people with gifts to do the work that needed to be done, versus, we were trying to work within the structures that we were used to. So, but we did it, and we built a pretty amazing number of dioceses and churches across what were the colonies and was now early America. Only then we started to spread across the Adirondacks, which back then was the Wild West, and we started to head into the upper Midwest and all that. And lots of Episcopalians went west too, and they wanted the church to come with them. So they sent out missionary bishops. These missionary bishops, it wasn't for everyone. Some of them got there and they thought, this is not what I bargained for. But there were some really good ones, and they sent letters back to General Convention and all the big churches in like New York and the heavy hitters of the Episcopal Church then, and said, here's what we need. We need to train lay men and women, right? But that's what they needed in this context. We need to serve all levels of society. We might even need to preach outdoors, because we don't even have buildings. Well, they heard the report. In New York, they built a seminary to train people to go out and do this ministry. And you know what the curriculum was based around? You gotta learn Greek, you gotta learn Latin, and most importantly, you gotta know how to use the right candles and wear the right vestments. A little bit of a disconnect there. And a lot of those seminary trained people that they sent west over the Adirondacks, they were disappointed. Because they expected that middle-class professional gig that they could have had if they stayed in New York or Washington or whatever, Maryland, Virginia, all those great places that had some thriving congregations. But you know what? The ones who did, they had to adapt, right? They learned. They saw the needs of the territories, and they got in there and did it with them. They shared some of that hunger, poverty, loss, and struggle, because you did. You didn't have a choice. See, this rarefied understanding of ministry and calling that had been originally born on another continent with like 1,000 years of Christian infrastructure rooted in the ground, like literally baked into the fabric of society, struggled for generation after generation to sort of level itself out and meet the needs of the people here in this rapidly unfolding new missional context. It was hard, but they figured it out. Here we are. We wouldn't be here today if that wasn't the case. But they weren't always, it wasn't always, they spent a lot of time wringing their hands and thinking, oh, we could be doing so much better. We could be as popular as those Methodists. So, Gospel of Luke today. I love this reading because I think it teaches us some really important things about ministry and what it looks like, who ministers are, who they serve, and how they do that. So today we meet Jesus in a kind of a completely different place than we left Jesus last week. Jesus called his first disciple, Simon, from a boat. And since then, he's become wildly popular. And Jesus is starting to realize that there's so many needs, so many people need healing and learning, and they need to hear the gospel and it's good news. So many of them need it that, you know what? I might need to build a team. Jesus, he's done a lot of healing by this point. He's even started to cause some waves. He calls the tax collector, the Pharisees, who in Luke's gospel are kind of the stand-ins for the status quo or the powers that be, are starting to get their feathers ruffled because he dares to say things like your sins are forgiven or heals somebody on the Sabbath. But Jesus is doing good work, and it's making a difference in people's lives. So just before this reading, Jesus has gone up a mountain, and he's gathered all his disciples, and we get a sense that this is a huge group of people. So many of them that he needs to actually name 12 of them to kind of be the leadership committee to help oversee all of this work. But there's lots of ministers. So many people have been called to help Jesus with the ministry of healing and preaching God's love and justice and peace in the world. And then Jesus comes back down the mountain and he goes to a level place. Now this is kind of surprising for us because these words that we hear, we associate them with what? The Sermon on the Mount. Right? That's Matthew.
Yeah.
But Luke gives us a really clear sense of how he envisions this unfolding in Jesus' life and ministry. It's a level place. Not just like coming down from a mountain, but it's a plain, it's flat. Everyone's welcome. Lots of people are there. Great crowd of disciples, right? Lots of his own followers. Great multitude outside of that, there for all of their healing. There are people from all over the place. Judea, which is kind of like code for the heartland. Jerusalem, that's the capital, that's the urbanites. And then even places way out there on the fringes, like Tyre and Sidon. That's like saying they're here from the Wild West. They might even perhaps be foreigners, some of them. So Jesus' word, clearly Luke sees that this is for everyone. And why do those people come? They're there because they're seeking healing. They want to hear Jesus' words of healing. They want to be healed from their diseases, and they want to be released from the power of unclean spirits that hold them captive. They are not really looking for an iconic sermon. I don't think like Greek or Latin. That's not what they're after. Well, maybe, I don't know. It's hard to say, but this gospel was written in Greek. The interesting thing, though, is what happens next. Because Jesus switches from all of that healing and power and miracles and all that, and it says very clearly, he looked up at his disciples. It's like he's like looking at them, he's like, you, okay, over there, listen, this is for you. And that's the context in which he then speaks the blessings and the woes. It's like this is his disciples' first training session. Now, to get what Jesus is teaching to his disciples, to the people who are going to also be part of his ministry, it would help to understand what is meant here by blessings and woes. And my commentary, Working Preacher, had a great insight on this I want to share with you. Because I discovered this is not that traditional understanding of blessings and curses, where you think to yourself, do this and you'll get blessed, and if you do this thing, you'll be cursed. That's not what it is. That's sort of what's going on in Jeremiah, but this case it uses a different word, different language here. It's just our translators kind of mix it all up. They're not sure what to do with it. So it seems as if what Jesus is really saying to his disciples is, this is what being my disciple is all about. If you're living alongside the people that you serve, living as they live, hungry when they're hungry, feasting with them in time of plenty, if you share their sorrows and their joys, and not get too wrapped up in status because you're really going to be doing the work of justice and healing and care, then guess what? You will be a blessing to the world. You will make the world more level, more just, and more whole in the way that God intends. But you know what? Then, given that look, watch out. Because if you're expecting a comfortable living without sharing all those ups and downs with the people that you serve, if you think this is going to be an easy ride without having to challenge things that don't want to be challenged, like injustices visited upon the vulnerable in your care, then you know what? You're going to be disappointed. And you will not actually manage to do the healing and leveling work that you are being called to here. In other words, I think Jesus is saying, if you want to be my follower, if you want to be part of my ministry, don't think that you're so special. I'm calling you to get in there and get your hands dirty and do the kinds of stuff that I'm doing. And Jesus, I love Jesus because Jesus teaches by doing. He says, follow me, and literally shows them what to do. I'm here, I'm on this level playing field, and I'm healing, and I'm reaching out to everybody that comes. My ministry is for all. It's meant to bring about healing and transformation so that abundance of life is not just hoarded by some. And guess what? You can be a part of this too. Just watch out, because it's going to change you also if you take part in it. I think it gives you pause, because following Jesus, it's not like we just get to sit outside and watch this leveling of the world happen. Nope. If we're going to be a disciple of Jesus, we need to look at the needs and get our hands dirty too. So here we are today. We're a small church, Episcopalians, a small denomination in changing times. But the needs are still huge. There's a lot of hunger, there's loss, there's struggle, and there is injustice aplenty out there. There is so much leveling work that still needs to happen in our world, so much sharing of all that love of the gospel that Jesus came to share to everyone, everywhere. And we might even get to do some challenging while we're at it, healing and transforming in the world. So we are called to be followers of Jesus here in this place, in this time. But you know what? Watch out. Because we may not be popular, we may not be comfortable while we're at it, and you bet your britches we are going to be changed by entering into this ministry that Jesus has offered to us and called us into. So maybe we don't need to get so hung up on the way we expected things to be for us Episcopalians, because the gospel of Jesus Christ, well, it's bigger than just that, isn't it? So if we can do all that, then we will be a blessing in this small part of that great leveling of God's love, peace, and justice for all. I wanted to close. We had finished this at 8 o'clock. That first hymn that we sang, I feel like it puts this together for us in a beautiful way. I'm going to invite you, I was just going to read it, but I'm going to invite us to just turn to the first page. And you can just sing with me. We'll do it a cappella, verse 1 and 3. And just, instead of thinking about the tune or if we're walking straight as we head down the aisle, just think about the words that you're singing. Ready? Christ for the world we sing, the world to Christ we bring, with loving zeal, but for and them that mourn the faint and overborne, sin, sick, and sorrow worn, whom Christ doth heal. Okay, let's do verse 3. Christ for the world